To the Citizens Club of Springfield. We're really glad you're here on this very cold morning, so thanks for coming out. I'm Joyce Narduli. I'm the president of this association, but I want to especially thank our board members, Chris Richmond and Abby Powell, for putting today's program together. We also want to thank WMAY and WUIS and the audio-visual department of the mayor's office. And let's also thank Dave Farrell for being today's coffee sponsor. And just so you know, we are now accepting annual dues for the 25-26 fiscal year, and that helps us defray the costs of being in this building and bringing these programs to you. And as I've told you before, we're now a 501c3 organization, so we're very, very proud of that. And we are in the process of putting a strategic plan together. So you should have received a survey in the mail, or email, I should say. Have you received that? Yes, good. Have you filled it out? Yes. Okay, that's great. Only the current members are receiving that at this time, but we do have a list of people who have come but not joined that we might be getting that survey to a little later. So just, if you haven't filled it out yet, it's very important to us to know your feedback and what you all think about what we're doing here today. And also we have a new opinion box. Did you see it back there? It's a really nice new one that was donated to us. So if you have more opinions, you'd like to write them down on a card and put them in, we will definitely take that to heart. This organization is yours, and we want you all to be involved. As you know, the Citizens Club is also a nonpartisan organization. We're dedicated to bringing you timely topics to assist you in thinking about what's going on in the community. And as I said, we do rely on the dues, but our programs are free and open to the public. So let your friends know that. They can always join us. That said, we are also not responsible for any of the comments or opinions expressed here. Our speakers this morning include Doug Brown. And Doug is the Chief Utility Engineer at City Water, Light and Power since 2015. However, he has worked there since 1994 in several high-level capacities. Doug currently oversees all aspects of the utility, including the electric division, the water division, the finance division, the regulatory affairs, and the city's information systems division. Ryan McCready is the president of the Springfield Sangamon Growth Alliance, where he's working to make our community a very attractive place for business to operate by capitalizing on the region's significant workforce, transportation, rail, and utility assets. And Ryan has held similar jobs in Decatur and extensive experience in banking, economic development, and local government administrations. Finally, our moderator, Chris Richmond, is a member of our board, as I said, and the president of Moving Pillsbury Forward, just a little $10 million project he's taking on volunteer basis, I might add. And he's trying to restore all of that property to industrial use. So Chris is retired from the Springfield Fire Department in 2019, where he did serve as the city's fire marshal and the final 6 years, but 25 years in public service career altogether. So Chris, come on up, you three, and take it away.
Hey, we got the mic on? There we go. All right. Well, I couldn't be more excited today than to be up here talking about solar projects is the main topic today. We, for me personally, I got involved in taking a critical look at solar when I got involved in the Pillsbury project. Shortly after 2019, we were looking at industrial redevelopment options, and certainly by 2019, solar was a big option based on what was going on in this major energy transition that we've got going on in America, coast to coast. So I took a critical look at that and looked, okay, what's the difference now between utility scale solar projects, community solar projects versus, individual property projects. And I started looking at these and sort of sorting these out, and actually met with solar developers at the Pillsbury site and, kind of determined what could possibly be there. But it really piqued my interest, got me going on that. And then about the same time, and many of us remember, in 2021, there was a pretty hard-fought lobby effort at the State House down the street for the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And that had everything to do with the energy transition taking place in Illinois and setting up for utilities, for property owners, all of the sort of ground rules for what does it look like to put a wind farm or a solar farm on your property? What's the zoning? What's got to take place there? How does it connect to the grid? Lots of these things were discussed in 2021 and largely worked out legislatively at the State House, which then, after that passed in 21, opened up solar and alternative energy sources in a bigger way in Illinois. And of course, throughout the nation with federal support, we've seen almost an explosion of solar throughout the state since 2021, and the projections are pretty impressive. As of today, or I should say August 2025, that's the latest statistics, just a couple of months ago, there are 4,800 megawatts of annual solar production throughout the state of Illinois. And there are another 5,000 megawatts of production in the pipeline right now, coming through on projects that are coming around. So today, I'm happy to have Doug and Ryan here to kind of discuss, locally for us, what's that look like? We've got a couple of really big projects, here locally, one in the pipeline. And many of us are aware that CWLP has been sort of repositioning itself on its energy mix. And maybe we can start off with that discussion, perhaps with Doug. Maybe you can talk a little bit about where CWLP's at and that balance on that energy mix and some of the things in the pipeline.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, okay. And I apologize, I'm trying to get over a cold here. But for CWLP, our primary, thing to do is, for us, is to provide a reliable, affordable, sustainable generation for all of our customers, right? So I'm going to give you some background on kind of why we're going with solar and what those benefits are. But most of you know, we do have coal-fired generation, natural gas generation, which are providing reliable and affordable power right now. And it's really actually going to be more critical in the future here to keep those units going. But we can't really meet all of our requirements, with the energy that we need in reserve and with the retirements of units 31, 32, and 33, we needed a look at solar, right? Look at renewables in general. As Chris had mentioned, the seizure rule for Illinois, where we're mandated to close units eventually here, and I'll get into that. So with that, having a diverse mix of our energy, though, if it's economical, it makes a lot of sense. You want to have diversity to where it's just things are more reliable that way, right? You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. It makes a lot of sense. Solar best fits our portfolio, though, for the energy use, for what we have for our existing generation and our load. Solar covers most of our energy throughout the day during the peak time, but it doesn't cover everything, right? So as the sun starts, going down, our usage still is climbing, right, into the evening. So there's a gap there, and something needs to fill that gap. Another thing too is, renewables are not dispatchable, like what fossil fuels are type thing. Solar mixed though with batteries can extend the life of solar to where you can kind of ride through your peaks and into the evening, right? So that extends the value of solar to us if we can do batteries with solar eventually. But batteries are still very expensive for only 4 hours of energy, okay? And we've worked with a lot of developers for energy storage, batteries, and it's not quite there yet, but I think it will be eventually, as far as, making it more economical and more technology. They just keep improving things, and it'll be here. But one thing too is that, our existing generation, so like interstate, it's being called on every day now, and it runs over 6 hours a day. So batteries can't really get there yet. They don't match that same reliability and availability for that, because once you discharge them, you have to recharge them. So they're kind of quasi-dispatchable with that regard. The value of accredited capacity, though, is important to us now. So with our existing units, it provides a large value, and it's going to be even more increasing in value as more units shut down across the state under CEJA. So with CEJA, by 2045, we have to shut down Unit 4 and interstate gas turbine. So that's going to require us to do something else, right? So we're going to have to plan for that. In order to maintain that reliability, I suspect we're going to have a mixture of renewables, batteries, or energy storage, along probably with smaller natural gas turbines, because you have to have something dispatchable to make up for the times where the sun isn't going to shine for days. Because once you discharge those batteries, they're not there, right? So we have to look at that. And then our bonds for Unit 4 are paid off in 2040. So we have a 5-year gap there that we can build whatever resources we need without, I guess our debt service that we have. We'll have savings there. So if there's a rate increase that's needed, it'll be minimized by that to provide another resource and build something. And I think with that, by 2035, 2037, there has to be a plan in place of what resources we're going to need so we can build them 3 to 5 years ahead of that 2045 date. That doesn't mean, though, that that's an integrated resource plan is something you're going to do every 5 years or so. That's more based on economics of what's currently happening. It's not really going to provide an exact timeline, because if we plan now what we're going to do 20 years from now, things are probably going to change, right? So you got to keep that in mind. So we have to have enough time, though, to bond, build, and bid out those projects. So with the immediate need that we have, though, for Unit 31, 32, and 33 retiring, the reason we needed solar is because we want to hedge against the volatile energy market prices. That's, to be exposed to that creates risks for our customers. So if we can obtain those projects at good prices, that's what we want to do, right? So in 2020, we did an RFP, a request for proposals, and we came out with one project that looked really promising. And before I get to our projects, I'm going to just cover a couple things, because a lot of people say, why don't we just build our own solar farm? It's pretty difficult for us, for our employees, essentially to get the negotiations with all the landowners, because the amount of land that's needed is very, very vast, right? When you hear some of these acreage that we're talking about, it's pretty difficult for us to do that. We just don't have that in-house expertise to do that, to go after that. So we look at power purchase agreements, or PPAs. So the other thing, too, that we have to keep in mind is that it's been extremely difficult for us to find projects that want to connect directly to our transmission. We want the power to be produced locally, because that's a real benefit, I think, to our community if it's produced locally. It also improves reliability, right? Instead of drawing power from 100 miles away or out of state, it's going to be here, right, attached to our system. So that's going to increase reliability, not relying on that transmission lines. Now, renewables are mostly above energy market prices for all the stuff that we've had. but we got good pricing on 2 projects. And I'm going to kind of go over that now. Sangamon Solar, that was our first one that we got as a result of that RFP that we did in 2020. But we had a lot of delays. COVID hit, price escalations. It's a 100 megawatt facility. It's located south of Chatham on about 750 acres. It's connecting to our 138 transmission system. That's a tie to Ameren, going back to the Auburn area. We're buying 25 megawatts for 25 years of that energy and a quarter of the credited capacity. So when you're looking at the capacity piece, it's not 25 megawatts exactly, it's accredited. So under MISO, it's basically in the first year, it's 50% of that value is for the accredited capacity, and then it starts tailing off, okay? So in the future, they've estimated that could be a value of about 4% in that regard. So that will require us to build more resources to meet our requirements in the future going forward. The project is expected to start in the summer of 2026 and finish in December of 2027. The other project is the Lincoln Capital Land Solar Project, okay? So it's a 125 megawatt facility located on 1,100 acres north of Springfield near the airport. That project is connecting to one of our substations up north. We're buying 20 megawatts of energy for 20 years and all of the credited capacity, which is big. So we're getting all the capacity of the entire facility. So the market price for the energy is well below market, and the credited capacity is essentially free. It's very, 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 very small price. And that's a really great deal. That's not really done a lot. The other developers that I've talked to, and I mentioned what we're doing, and they just can't believe it really. But what this company's going to do is the excess energy they're going to sell, and they'll make their profit. That way, they can invest in this project, right? So it's good for us. It's good for them. It's a win. And then not to get too blatant on it, but we really had to accelerate in this last one because MISO had this new process called ERAs, and it basically allowed us to jump the queue in the grid, because once you enter the queue for MISO for any kind of project, it's years of delays. And we can't afford that, especially once the one big beautiful tax bill went into effect, basically eliminating the tax credits. That's really jeopardizing solar going forward, or renewables. But we were able to get into this queue in MISO. One interesting fact though with it is that our partner was, as they were hitting submit on it, the top 36 submissions were milliseconds apart. So really the latency of the computer probably caused where you're at in the queue. So we made it in the top 10. I think we're fortunate for that. It's kind of crazy that they actually did it that way, but good for us though, for our community. We have to meet the safe harbor deadline of July 26th though, in order to get those tax credits, and then have it built within 4 years. But without the tax credits, the project's going to be too expensive and it won't get built. So we need that. Well, I think I probably talked enough right now. Ryan, you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So what we're hearing, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts here in the energy world, right? But whether it's a mix of state and federal tax credits, the size of land needed, the situation at the State House with what's acceptable there. It's a pretty complex thing, and of course we're all hearing too. We heard 15, 20 years ago that with energy efficiencies, with the onset of LED light bulbs and all those sort of things, that we had maxed out on energy, and then here in the last 6 or 8 years, now with the onset of data centers taking up a lot more energy, though that usage is going up. So you're in a tough position there with a lot of moving parts on the chessboard to forward look at for a 20-year period. So I don't know if I would envy that position. It's a tough place to be. Ryan, let's talk to you a little bit about what the SSGA's been doing and how it relates to the Double Black Diamond project. This is the monster solar project in southern Sangamon County that came online not too long ago. How that kind of fits into the mix in what's going on in this energy landscape.
It's okay if I walk through my slides? I
Yeah,
have a few slides
absolutely.
there.
We'll, maybe Doug and I can scoot over and let you do a presentation here.
Sure. Thank you, Chris and Doug. And Doug's a tough act to follow. You're going to find out very quickly that I am not an engineer. So the discussion I have for you is more about what the Growth Alliance has been involved in with solar development across the community. Also provide you some insights on what it means from an economic development perspective based on businesses that we talk to. So those are businesses that are here today and then businesses that we look to attract into the community. This is the team at the Growth Alliance. Abby is here. Abby Powell's here. She's there in the back of the room. And then also Amber and Shelley. So just want to make sure you know about our organization. Just a real quick background for those that don't know, the Growth Alliance is a public-private partnership, and we do economic development all across Springfield and Sangamon County. We're funded both by public bodies here in the community, but also about 30 private companies that provide funding for us. And our goals basically are to have more people living and working in Springfield and in Sangamon County. And we want the people that live and work here to make more money every year. And we want to work to attract more residents into our community also. So those are the things that we focus on. Solar and renewable development, like Chris and Doug had said, is getting a lot of coverage, a lot of discussion across the globe, and also here locally. The way that we impact on solar development for economic development is when we talk to businesses, they have many times a business wants to make sure they're in a community that has access to renewable energy. They want to be able to make sure that they can add that into the portfolio of energy that they're buying in their production processes. At the same time, they want to make sure that they can always keep their processes running all the time. So they want to make sure that we have renewables, and they want to make sure that they also can have that reliability of making sure that when they come in the morning, they can turn the lights on, or their manufacturing machines are run all the time. So it's a balance of those two things. So our community is very well positioned to be able to offer that portfolio of different types of power. And that's because of really important innovative investments made by both the private and public bodies across central Illinois and across the state of Illinois. Chris and Doug mentioned what's called CEJA, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that passed. That created more opportunities for solar, wind, and renewable development across our state. And also, importantly, it also attached standards for making sure that our folks build these renewables, that our folks here locally are trained to take care of them. So as you see jobs transition out of maybe the coal industry, as it starts to have less employment, how do we retrain people to be able to maintain the renewable energies that exist? The good news is bodies like Lincoln Land Community College and other educational institutions, University of Illinois at Springfield, they are training those workers also. And so I encourage young people to look at a career in that. You can get trained here locally, and because of the significant investments we have here, there's job opportunities for you too. So renewable energy being available is an important part of our economic development effort. It's something we get asked about frequently, especially when companies and businesses are looking to locate here. Now, like a lot of things in our life, there's proponents and opponents for things, and renewable development is no shortage of those two sides. I'm going to do the best I can to encapsulate the typical things I hear. I'm not here to say I'm a proponent or an opponent. I'm just sharing what I've heard as we've gone through the process. Just like the Citizens Club, doesn't take responsibility for anything I say. I don't claim to speak on behalf of any proponents or opponents. But we have gone through a few large projects here locally where we've gotten to be part of that debate. The proponents for it, I believe, understand the importance of having renewable energy, understand the importance of the impact on our environment from traditional ways of generating electricity. They also understand that there's a significant amount of taxes that go back into our local economy when these developments happen. The opponents many times are concerned about things like taking farm ground out of production. That's something that we do hear a lot about. What impact's that going to have on the agricultural community? I don't want to look at it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. Those types of things concern them. They also, have concerns about, does it have any strain on any other resources? And then the question about how does it impact baseload capacity? Like Doug was mentioning, wind and solar, how do we offset the lack of capacity credits you get when that is developed? So those are some of the items that you will typically hear about. One of the things that happened recently that made a big change in how renewable developments are approved by county boards, for example. Traditionally in Illinois, each body of local government that had zoning rules established their own rules for being able to have renewable developments in your community, whether that's wind or solar. Things that's like for a wind development, what are the minimum setbacks from another structure? What types of zoning areas can they be allowed in? All those types of things. And there was a real mismatch of rules across the state. And that made it difficult for developers to be able to look at opportunities across the state because they're looking for things like major transmission lines, substations, things like that. And as you can guess, those always span across local governmental boundaries. And so there was a lot of inconsistencies in there. And there were some units of government around the state that were basically adopting standards that were so onerous that there's no way a renewable development could be profitable in their jurisdiction. They could say they supported it because they allowed it, but then the rules were set up such that there was no way for an economical type investment to make it happen. So like a lot of things in life, the state of Illinois came in and said, we're going to have one standard across the whole state. And that probably didn't go over real well with a lot of local governmental bodies, but that's the situation that we're in right now. And so the state did step forward and then leveled out the requirements for renewable developments across the state. That has also helped spur some additional types of development. So these proponents and opponents are both passionate about their positions on that. And I would just ask if you're not on either side of that you work really hard to get really good information as you go about forming your opinions on that. We have to be careful in the modern day of social media to understand the difference between the quantity and the quality of information that we're consuming. So I just ask that you kind of take a moment, take a deep breath, and when you dive into learning about those things, work hard to get a very informed decision. The good news here is locally is our county is home to one of the largest solar developments in the country. This is what is called the Double Black Diamond Solar Development. I put a red star on the map. I hope you can see it. Right there. Yeah. Does anybody know the name of that town that's right next to the red star? Does anybody know? That's a bad dad joke. I had to do that. I grew up pretty close to that part of the county, and every time we drove by, as a kid, my dad did that to us. When we drive down Route 4 and he'd say, what town is over that way? We'd say Louder. Anyway, so it's located just outside of Louder. It gets better, I promise. This is about a 4,200 acre solar development, basically the equivalent of covering Lake Springfield with solar panels, right? We're about a 4,100 acre lake. So that gives you some idea of the size and scale of this. This development went online December 31st, 2024. It took about 18 months for construction. The developer of this is Swift Current Energy. They're a large national developer of renewable projects across our country. This was about an $850 million investment, and this solar development produces about 600 megawatts is their capacity. The main transmission line for our region runs right through the center of this property, which is probably no surprise to you. And Swift Current Energy has been a very good partner to work with. When Swift Current was in their early consideration of this site, They came to meet with myself and the Growth Alliance to talk about their interest in this solar development. What's interesting is we had never permitted a solar development in Sangamon County before this one. Now, a lot of counties started with 5 megawatts, 30 or 40 acre developments. We didn't. We started with, at the time, the biggest one in the country. So that was going to be an interesting path. The county board had recently adopted standards for allowing solar development in the county, and so this was basically the first test at going through that process. Swift Current was very upfront with the community as their process, very open to questions, meeting with local governmental bodies like townships and road commissioners and people like that. So I've very much admired their process. They had a website available for people to ask questions, and met with county board members also to talk about it. Some of the things I want you to realize about these types of developments, this development, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about how this happens. The things I hear a lot of times is we're bringing panels from China. They're bringing people in from other countries to build it. It doesn't create any permanent jobs. Those are things that I hear. But I just want to provide you some facts. This was constructed with all local labor. There's a project labor agreement on these projects. And so about 400 to 500 of our local tradespeople constructed this project. I can't even imagine the impact that had economically into our community for this 18-month construction project. I drove down there several times to just go around the site with the site developer to kind of update me on what was going on with it. It looked like that scene for Star Wars where they're kind of out in the desert and there's just people everywhere. So this was a massive construction effort that went on. Also, this developer exceeded all of the minority participation requirements on this project. So they had a project labor agreement. We had very diverse participation in the construction of it. A couple of things that we're very proud of. And the developer and their general contractor had nothing but good things to say about how the community supported them in this effort. So you should be very proud that our folks built this standout project that is getting attention across the globe. The panels and equipment produced were manufactured in the United States. All of that was. And that's something that Swift Current Energy brags about, frankly, and they're very proud about. And then also, Swift Current Energy entered into a long-term community benefit agreement. This is something the Growth Alliance put out public information about, but you may not have heard about that. Many times, renewable energy developers enter into community benefit agreements to show their long-term commitment to the community with their project. And those things generally provide funds to the community to use for things that are important out in the community. Swift Current Energy, the Growth Alliance negotiated with Swift Current Energy, and they signed a 20-year community benefit agreement to provide $250,000 every year for 20 years into the community benefit fund. And that fund those funds will flow through the Community Foundation of Land of Lincoln. The hope is to help set up a fund that can help support and expand arts and cultural activities in the community to help us attract and retain citizens and to keep folks here. The good news is I believe you can also put your own money into that fund too. So if any of you are interested, I know you'll be hearing from John Strumsterfer probably very soon. But that shows their long-term commitment to the community also. And those funds are flowing automatically. They pay into the fund on a quarterly basis. We're very, very excited about that, and it was something that was very easy to negotiate with this developer too. So this is a common thing that happens. So those are some of the benefits that we see. Having access to this type of renewable energy helps us attract companies into the community. We brag about this project when we do outreach to companies looking for sites and their site selection consultants. I also brag about the quality of our workers here, that we're able to do that. And renewable development also helps show to businesses that are here and businesses from the outside that we are a community that is forward-thinking, that we understand, where the future is going, that we're investing in the future, we're investing in new technologies, we're training the workforce for it. So all those are very good signals to the community. So that's how we get involved in renewable development as an economic development organization. So thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Ryan. That's answered quite a few questions for us, and that community benefit agreement, that's impressive. You said $250,000 a year for the next 20 years?
20 years, yeah. So that's $5 million over 20. That's quick math. $5 million over 20 years. So yes, it's definitely a very concrete commitment from this organization to the community. There's a lot of times there's a thought that these things get built, they get flipped to somebody else and flipped to somebody else. All these kind of things go on. We try to be really careful looking for developers that want to make a long-term commitment and connection to the community. No matter what type of development we're working on, whether it's renewable or a warehouse or anything else, that's really important. And you kind of test that commitment in a number of ways. Are you going to use our workers to build what you're building, right? That shows that you want to make a long-term commitment here. Are you going to own and operate whatever you're building? Swift Current Energy also has about 12 to 15 permanent employees that are full-time employed maintaining the site, maintaining the equipment. And they actually have a building that they bought in Auburn, Illinois on Route 4 where they work out of. So they're fairly close over there to the site so they can get there and help maintain it.
Yeah. Now kind of dovetailing on that project, we hear a lot of times, hey, what's this look like in 20 years? The panel life, is the panel life 20 years? And then what happens after that?
Yeah. The county board in Sangamon County had a really good permitting process that does a number of things. It has a lot of forward-thinking information and requirements in there for decommissioning. It's interesting to me because people talk about solar panels like, well, every year they don't produce as much. Well, what does? Like if you bought a piece of equipment for a factory, doesn't it also lose efficiency as you go forward? So it's not unusual for equipment to have that kind of impact. The county board has requirements in their permitting, requirements to make sure when they're driving the posts in for the solar panels that they don't impact field tiles from neighboring properties. They have to account for that. They have to plant crops, pollinating crops underneath the panels. So when you drive out there, you'll see that that's still going on to allow pollination of other crops out into the area. They have to have a long-term commitment and bond for decommissioning. So if it's not operating anymore, things have to be taken back out of the ground. The ground has to be restored back to that. There are screening requirements and those kind of things too. So, just like a lot of things, whether it's an oil well, there's decommissioning requirements there also. The renewable energy basically operates with the same standards.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. I know, we look at those, we hear a lot about that, okay, what looks, is this going to be abandoned someday in the near future?
Yeah.
But those provisions have been written in on the front end. There is a plan for decommissioning and what that looks like later, and then there's a fair chance it could get turned back into farm ground in another generation.
There's an anticipation there, as much as any of us can predict 20 or 25 acres from now, but there are things in place to try to address that.
Right.
Well, and I think the reality is that these facilities, they're not going to go away, right? I mean, we're going to still need energy, even if they are, end of useful life. They're going to have to be replaced. Unless there's some other new technology that can replace that, right, which is possible. So I think, more than likely, though, in the next, 25 years, what you see out there being built now, it'll continue to stay for another 25, more than likely.
And Chris, we're also getting inquiries at the Growth Alliance from entities looking to place battery storage. So to Doug's point, the battery storage technology is coming alongside now, and I hope that technology advances very quickly because it's going to help address some of the issues with wind and solar and what it means as far as being able to store the energy at times when it's not all being used. And my experience is the technology will come along. People will figure out how to do that, and which is good. And then the Sangamon Solar Project that you mentioned, the 700-acre project south of Chatham, that should start construction in 26. That's also a project that the Growth Alliance worked on. We basically had both of these solar projects being developed at exactly the same time. The Swift Current project went faster, obviously. But there's been questions also with changes at the federal level and people involved with that, which I'm not interested in talking about today, but those changes, that's gonna stop all solar development across the country. And this 700-acre solar development is going ahead and expects to break ground in 2026 as the weather allows. They also will use our local workers. They also will meet all those other requirements that we talked about with Swift Current. And I do also expect there'll be a community benefit agreement with that project too.
Yeah. And there are other project, which is the one by the airport. We're hoping to have an interconnection agreement done really probably in December. So if we can get that done in that time frame, then they'll lay out a construction schedule for that. So we just got to meet those the dates for safe harbor for July of 2026 next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I
Yeah.
offer one more thing?
Sure.
Yep. The other question I get a lot that I forgot about the opponents to these is, why didn't they put it on this piece of ground? Why don't they just cover every parking lot with solar panels? And you have to understand, Doug talks about these interconnect agreements, or interconnect permissions. The regional power grid operator, MISO, has to approve, first of all, a connection out there into the grid. But also, these developments don't work everywhere. There's a lot of factors at play. How far are the solar panels from a substation? Can that substation handle? Is it set up with the infrastructure to take the solar power coming into it? How far is it from a transmission line? All those things are important when you do site location and they go to pick sites for these developments. So the answer is no, they don't work everywhere. And site location is, you stand on any overpass in Sangamon County and see thousands of acres of farm ground. Not every acre of those 1,000 can handle renewable development because of the proximity it has to be to other infrastructure.
And to go further with that, we start looking at putting solar, facilities kind of everywhere, right? You have to have inverters and transformers for everything, right? So if you can build economies of scale, it requires less components then at that point overall, and it lowers your cost. So that's why utility scale solar is usually generally a lot cheaper than building, a half a megawatt here, a half a megawatt there, and putting it everywhere kind of thing. So that's another component to that.
I was going to say, in a relative sense, and I mentioned that, for the Pillsbury property redevelopment, this is just an example. We've got 18 acres there. We looked at and had a developer come out and give us an approximation of what that might look like for a solar farm on that 18 acres. And it looked like about 14 acres of usable space with zoning and setback and what have you. We would have had to reconstitute a substation that used to exist at Pillsbury but doesn't still exist. And then we would have had a facility that produced 1.5 to 2 megawatts of power annually, which would have, powered up between 300 and 500 homes, but it's nothing near, utility scale. I think, Ryan said, look, the 4,200 acre site, and it's an economy of scale, 600, what is it, 600,000 megawatts?
No, 600 megawatts.
Or 600 megawatts per year. So, you're trying to wrap your head around that, you go, wow, the 18 acres at Pillsbury, 1.5 to 2 megawatts versus, something much larger. There's sort of a sweet spot in there for the developers, and it seems to be, something north of a few hundred acres.
Yeah, it is because of that fixed cost that exists, Chris. And one other item I want to point out is the other reason solar panels can't just go everywhere is nothing happens without a willing property owner. So these are not eminent domain projects. A property owner has to be willing to have their property leased or purchased to participate in these types of developments. And I can tell you, working in economic development, Abby and I can tell you all day long, when we have a project looking for any type of site, and we call property owners that have sites for sale, there are always a list of people that say, I'm not interested in that project being on my land. At that point, they're not considered. We don't tell developments where to happen, whether it's a solar, a wind, or a factory. Absent a willing property owner, you don't go forward at that site.
Yeah. I think we're getting pretty far into our hour now. Are there questions from the audience out there that we may have? Yeah.
John Kelker is going to take the microphone around to you, and as you know, we want you to stand up and state your name, and we don't care if your opinion is for or against. Just ask your question, please, so we can get to as many as possible.
Okay. There's one toward the back there.
My name's Ann Logue, and I appreciate all the information that's been shared today, and I appreciate that Ryan is well-versed in lots of different aspects of solar. That's great. I would like to mention that solar, even without the benefits, is still the cheapest energy source right now, according to a lot of data out there, and Iowa has had lower electricity rates than other places because of their renewable energy. You mentioned 600 megawatts with the Diamondback solar plant, and why would we have renewable energy in the first place? 600 megawatts is equal to 3 Dahlman 4 plants, I would believe, and I think the whole point is to offset carbon emissions. Where is your position on carbon emissions, and what are you interested in doing in reducing that? Brian?
My position on carbon emissions? Yes. My position personally, or the position of my organization? I don't produce any power. I'm not a power generator. But I'm not going to state my personal opinion. I'm here on behalf of the Springfield Segment Growth Alliance. I don't think it's appropriate for me in a public forum to start putting my personal opinion. I try really hard not to do that.
What is the Segment Growth Alliance position?
Yeah, we have been the biggest supporter of these renewable energy developments. We help get these things through the county board. We help do all those types of things, but we support all types of development. And it's important to us that development follows the rules that are in place, that we're not asking for exceptions to the rules. And we trust policymakers to make really good rules. So my encouragement is to people to get involved in the rulemaking, whether that's at the state, the federal, or the local level. When bodies get together and adopt rules for development, whether it's renewable, whether it's a natural gas plant, whether it's a factory or a warehouse or a restaurant. Getting involved in that rulemaking process is very, very important. And when we talk to developers, we encourage them, these are the rules, please follow them going forward. And there's a public process for approval of it.
So, and I would just follow up with that, I guess, as far as the utility goes, is that, the things that we've been after for quite a few years now is, we retired 31, 32, and 33 coal-fired units, trying to reduce our emissions, pursuing renewables like solar, but we need to do it affordably, right? We need to look at the economics. So no matter what, things are produced anywhere else, it doesn't really matter. It's what the proposals we get for the projects that we see, what's that pricing, is it economical or not? And that's the financing side of it, right? The affordability side. But reliability is a key factor, right? We can't just shut down our dispatchable units and just go strictly to solar and wind and batteries. It's not going to work. So you have to have something that's going to be there when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. And when you're talking about multiple days, not just a couple hours. So we want to reduce our emissions as much as possible, make it affordable for our citizens. It does take time. And I think, a lot of the conversation in the news as well with data centers coming on, people say, we shouldn't build data centers. Well, we use our cell phones constantly, our computers, watching Netflix and Hulu. Those are great resources, video conferencing type stuff. Medicine, developing medicine from using that stuff that probably would take hundreds of years to figure out solutions to things. Now they can do in a day because of data centers. So with that, it's a responsibility to provide reliable power to keep advancing society, right? So it has to be a slow transition. It can't be overnight. And I think, the utility's positioning itself well to do that. Complying with Illinois CEJA law, by 2045, we're trying to set that path to develop those renewables. Hopefully the battery technology is going to be there, use smaller gas turbines to supplement when the power's not available, and that's how we'll proceed.
Right, a lot of things to match up there, like you say, not just solar panel technology or wind turbine technology, but batteries, battery technology advancing, but it's not quite there yet. And all these pieces have to work in sync to make this transition happen effectively. So we've got a few more questions out.
Yeah, right here.
In the audience here.
I'm John Allen. I appreciate you guys coming out so early and delving into this topic. I'm interested in the land. So Ryan, 4,200 acres sounds like a lot. Was that one landowner or several?
I believe it was 2 landowners.
Oh, okay. And what percentage of 4,200 acres is that land in Sangamon County, farmland in Sangamon County?
Yeah, that development does go just across the county line into Morgan County, into southeast Morgan County. And this is purely a guess. I would say about 80% of that development's in Sangamon County, I think. Give me some grace on knowing that number off the top of my head, but the vast majority of it is in Sangamon County.
Yeah, my question's more of all of the farmland in Sangamon County, how much is 4,200 acres?
I did not know there was going to be a math test. I'm sorry. I don't know what the percentage is. Sangamon County is blessed with great topsoil and great farmland.
Right.
Like all of Illinois is and all the Midwest is. So as a percentage of it, it's probably a smaller percentage depending on your perspective. If you're very much interested in preserving all farm ground, any percentage is large. If you're a proponent of the development, it's not a big percentage. Though that's the 2 sides of it that I've seen going forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
1%.
Yeah. So we're hearing from the audience.
Some quick
1%.
calculations by multiple parties have both come up with the same number of about 1%.
Question up front.
I'm Kathleen Campbell. I'm president of Citizens Against Heartland Greenwashing Projects, and most of our members are farmers. We have been opposing carbon dioxide pipelines. I really applaud and thank you for your work on developing solar in Sangamon County. We appreciate that. But for our farmers, now some of them, it's the aesthetics of solar, and it's been in their family for generations. We might not be able to change them, but some of our farmers would be interested in solar if they could also use it for agricultural development. But the agricultural development that's proposed to them is sheep, shade crops, herbs, and there's no market, no infrastructure for them. As we all know, our farmers are in real trouble right now financially, and some of them might be open, but that's where they need help. And is there anyone developing plans for them? If you raise sheep, you have a market for sheep. If you want to raise herbs, you have a market for that. Here's the equipment you need. They're set up for corn and solar, and they can't really switch very easily. And some of them have actually been looking into it, but they don't know where to go. So I think that sticking point is something that needs to be addressed, if you can do so.
It's a really good point. It sounds like you might have some ideas on other things that can happen, because I'm not sure. Now, I know the Sangamon County Board is working hard on a farm-to-table initiative. You know, they had initially a launch providing some food to local school districts. I know the county board is working with the Community Foundation to expand that. So just off the top of my head, I'm thinking if there's some way to grow other types of crops and adjacent to the solar panels. I'm not an expert on that, but that would be one solution. The issue you have, right, is the cost to get the crops to market. What's it cost to get to the end user? And if there's something that I can do to help facilitate that, I'm happy to. I just don't know what other best practices there have been.
A question now on your left side.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Rachel Doctors. I have two questions. One, I think I missed a number. You say you're retiring units 31, 32, and 33. How many megawatts is that? And then both of my questions are for you. And then my second question is, there are two current programs for citizens to, and I don't know if it's a donation or what it is I'm doing on my bill, where those credits that you can buy. So how do those programs feed in? Do I get a reduction now that you're getting all this great solar and it's cheaper, or is it just kind of like this donation, I'm doing a good thing?
So, 31 and 32 were 80 megawatt units each, and unit 33 was 180 megawatts that we retired.
Okay, so that's a little bit less than 400.
Yeah, so and we basically had a lot of excess energy, but that's what made, I guess you say the reliability factor, when you start retiring multiple facilities, because every facility, no matter what you build, will have issues, right? You're going to have maintenance and things go wrong, essentially, right? So, but that's why we need additional energy as well. I think you mean like for RECs, right? So you can purchase RECs. What now? Well, yeah. But I think what you're saying is maybe the renewable choice program that we have, that you can buy RECs. What Debbie just reminded me of is we also have my solar program where you can buy blocks of solar. Essentially, it's a 250 kW facility that was built in 2018. One block is 100 kW hours, kilowatt hours. So it's $4.40 per month per block. So it's about 60% subscribed right now. And if you want to, you can go to our website at cdop.com or contact Energy Services at 217-789-2070. One thing real quick I want to say just too is these larger developments of solar are really, key, but rooftop solar, we have a net metering policy that we've done for quite a few years now. And we've exponentially grown that in the last 2 years to 11 megawatts. So that's pretty impressive. It keeps our Energy Services Office people very, very busy to process all those requests. But I think, it's hard to say how things will go in the future, especially since the one big beautiful bill, kind of removed the tax credits. So I don't know how that's going to work out going forward. But if you do think about going rooftop solar, just look at our frequently asked questions. Just so you're better informed. It's important to make sure that you know what you're getting into, so that way, the solar vendors, not really the ones locally as much, it's more the ones that are out of town, seem to cause a lot of problems. So we're trying to help through that process a little bit. So at least get you going.
We have time for one more quick question.
Yeah, we've got another question here up front.
Hi, Erin Kirkpatrick here. Thank you all. As I understand it, electrons don't really care who bought them. Once they get on the grid, they go to wherever they're being used the closest. You said with the double black diamond, the 600 megawatts is about 120,000 to 420,000 homes that could be powered. But I also heard mention of the proposed new data center, which would use an equivalent amount of energy. So I'm struggling to understand how it wouldn't cancel out the entire project.
How it wouldn't cancel out the entire project? Yeah, so part of the study that the regional grid operator has to do when a large load is going to interconnect into the grid is a study of what impact that's going to have on the region as far as blackouts, brownouts, pricing, other impacts that they're going to have. Right now, there is excess capacity on that transmission line and on that grid, and the regional power operator stated that load, that 600, actually the approval right now is for 300 megawatts for the first phase of the proposed data center, can operate on the grid without a negative impact. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I may also not fully understand it. So,
well, let me add to that. One thing to think about is these 345 kV transmission lines that crisscross the state of Illinois can bring a lot of energy from other states in. So if this data center is not built here, it's going to get built somewhere else, and they're going to consume the same energy from those sources on that same line, just in another state or county or wherever. So I guess the only thing that we would be giving up is maybe billions of dollars in taxes locally, plus some jobs too. I'm assuming. I don't know how many jobs that come with the data centers, but so you got to think about that more globally a little bit, because these data centers aren't going away. They're going to get built, and a lot of them are going air-cooled, so they consume more energy but less water. So they're going to consume something, though, to make that benefit to build that data center that, everybody, they want the end product out of it. They just don't want to, have to, I guess, build the resource.
Yeah, right now we're putting those 600 megawatts on the grid from the double black diamond solar. And so I would look at it as a positive thing if we can capture those electrons and use them here locally, as opposed to them going off to Indiana, Missouri, Louisiana, or somewhere else in the MISO territory. So it's an opportunity to do that.
Thanks. Let's thank our panel for a great presentation. And thank you all for being here today. Our next program will be right here, November 21st, where our speakers will join us from the Illinois Times and NPR Illinois to reflect on the past 50 years and to see what the future holds. So we hope we'll see you all then. And then finally, on November 25th at 7 p.m., we have Senator Doris Turner and Representative Mike Coffey coming right here to the Hoagland to talk for us about what's happening with our state budget, what kind of legislation have they passed, what are they looking to do next spring, and what kind of budget constraints do they see for us in the future. So we hope you'll mark your calendars for both of those dates, November 21 and November 25. See you then. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Good job.